Hello, and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Hello, empaths. We're so happy to join you this week and share some of the wonderful questions and stories that you all have sent in for our monthly community connection show. I'm going to start us off if that's okay with you.
Sounds great.
Okay, so our first listener says, I'm wondering if there is a way I can clear a home with distance Reiki. I've got my 1 and 2 Reiki certification about 2 months ago, and I have a client who is struggling with a spirit. She lives within walking distance of a cemetery, and I was wanting to help her. So I think this is a great question. I'm sure this can be done because energy is energy and it goes everywhere as with the intention of our thoughts. And I do think when you add Reiki to it, that it can be very, very effective. So, what I would recommend is that you take a photograph of your friend or your client, or just write her name down and hold that piece of paper while you're doing the distant Reiki energy and send the intention that her home is filled with light. If there is a spirit in there who doesn't want to go, it might take a little bit more than that. But sending distant Reiki energy is always a great way to start. It can't do anything negative or harmful. It's only going to help and assist the energy in the home.
And I think it's a good point that she makes about, or this person makes about living within walking distance of a cemetery. And what comes to mind is I've never understood, well, why would they want to hang out in a cemetery anyway? We've talked about this with egregores and other energies that form. Is it the sadness and the emotion and the energy of the cemetery that causes that? I think it can be a combination of both at times.
Oh, that's interesting. So, because there's a lot of sadness and grief there, spirits who are stuck or still transitioning might be drawn to the energy of the sadness, like attracts like. Is that what you're saying?
Right, like similar to walking into any kind of a building or an institution or a place where there's been a lot of heavy emotions. I wonder if, because so many people have beautiful headstones and someone tends the flowers and they take care of them. And I know it's for the people that are here as much as the person in spirit. It's ritual, it's honoring, it's all of those things. But I've just never felt scared in a cemetery.
No, no. And I've never felt that they were riddled with ghosts either.
No. And we were talking about this a bit before, is the energies are changing very, very quickly and becoming, I don't want, transparent isn't the word, or fluid isn't the word, but there just seems to be a different frequency that we're all tapping into. And I wonder if that could be part of this as well. But to get back to the question, I love what you said about the distance Reiki, because you're right, it's not going to hurt anything and it might fill that space with more light and more love and more empowerment for the person who lives there.
Yes, exactly. It's always a good thing to send Reiki love.
Yes. Our next one, your March energy forecast led me to look up into the Mercury Kazemi that occurred earlier in the month. I began to try to view astrology as a science, something concrete that can help guide me if I'm feeling slightly confused or unsure of which route or decision to make in my life. The Mercury Kazemi allows us to reset thought processes and communicate in more clear ways. Then I saw a notification from a former coworker who was shared that she is working on opening a school called Mercury Kazemi, which is geared towards neurodivergent youth. But their hope is that, and their process and their direction is to help foster intrinsic motivation, to help students express more freedom with less judgment and expectations. And I'm happy to say I'll be involved in the summer outreach programs to promote the school. This felt so aligned with my passions in life, as I've been an intervention specialist for 10 years and have felt disempowered by school systems. I've been wanting to find ways to be more inclusive, and this feels like a calling to me. Then I got a notification that a recent partner had been sharing in a friend group that I have been designated as a muse for their band. I didn't feel that this was a genuine compliment, as our relationship ended on less than a favorable note. I shrugged it off and opened an email only to discover that another local band had reached out to me to collaborate. I had to rub my eyes. We've been collaborating on our interests, and they've asked me to share a few poems I've written, lines and inspirations. We're in the process of putting music to back the lyrics of one of my poems. I want to say that I'm not a professional singer, but this process has already been so uplifting and validating. I've been wanting to use my voice in creative ways, and this all feels so aligned. Well, I love this in the sense that the person was drawn to a new interest, and I do agree, when you're able to view astrology as a science, don't you find that so many people that are very, very, very good at astrology and they know every dip and turn and segment, they have that analytical mind, they have that sciencey mind because it is very factual and based on hundreds and hundreds of years of research.
Yeah, and it just shows that because even despite her first feelings of, oh, they're not really using me as a muse or this isn't really about me, it actually was. And she put all those links together.
Right. Right. And just it feels like spirit is opening up the doors for this person and saying, okay, we're going to send across some opportunities and they're going to align more fully with who you're becoming. And I think that that's very prevalent right now for folks.
Yeah, I do too. And it just sounds like she's really doing some beautiful work. I love that.
Yes.
Her next one says, I had to unfortunately put my dog Wilson down in the beginning of March. He and I were together for 12 years. Oh, I'm so sorry. My favorite buddy. And it took me 2 weeks before I could walk to our favorite spot. As I was walking, I was fighting back tears, and then I noticed a small baby blue moth or butterfly beside me. It was flying up and then down. I realized it was trying to walk with me. It followed me for a minute or so and then disappeared. It was way too early for butterflies to be out, so I knew instantly it was Wilson's spirit, and I felt calmer and happier knowing he was free from all pain. Oh,
Oh,
what a
that's
stunning
beautiful.
message. That really is.
Yeah.
And it's such a reminder that they miss us too, and they want to connect with us. And when she finally had the energy and the courage to go to their favorite walking spot, he was like, oh, my mom's there. I'm going to go join her.
Right. And interesting how is is the animal sending the signs? Is someone in spirit that's connected with us sending the signs with the animal? We don't
I
know.
know. I
I
always
don't,
think it's kind of coordinated. I've read so many books about mediums in especially in the 1890s to like 1920s. And to read the accounts of some of those, back then they called readings seances. And so many of the accounts, I'm talking about those men, like remember Arthur Ford and there's Leslie Flynn who could actually channel the voices of people.
yes.
Well, there were so many occurrences of these, especially men who had just died in the war, and they would say, "Oh, I'm here in heaven, and it's so beautiful, and I see my grandmother, and she's telling me we have to find this group here on the other side who will help me communicate with my family." You see example after example of that. There was another one Leslie Flint brought through of a soldier, and his guide greeted him and said, you have an aunt who's open to this. Let's try to connect with her first through a dream to let the family know you're okay. So I've always just felt it's a coordinated effort.
I agree. And I do think for some animals that are soul animals, there in my own personal world, I do believe that animals carry a spark of divine, a connection with spirit that's unique to the animal. And I think that they can find a way to reach out to us, whether it's through others or through their own heart connection to us.
Yes,
Uh,
their own intention of love.
yes, beautiful. And if anyone's interested, there are some things online with Leslie Flint, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, totally different level of mediumship in my book.
Yeah, I agree. I think most of them are on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can hear his voice change, the inflections. It's fabulous.
And we've talked, mentioned that in several episodes of going back to the older mediums, the older texts, the older books. There is a plethora of information and skills and things that aren't you, you may not find on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly.
No disrespect to the TikTok, but
No, no.
just saying, there's foundational skills that might be helpful. Okay, I'm going to dig out of that hole and just say, just wanted to share a couple of signs I've received. The next one that I feel were from spirit or my guides. My mother passed away back in July 2025. We were very close. She was my best friend, and now I feel so lost without her. We discussed the kinds of signs she would send me from the other side prior to her passing, and I insisted it be a fawn that somehow interacts with me in an unnatural way. She always said, I need something easier. That one's going to be hard to pull off. She was probably right, but unbeknownst to me, she and my 12-year-old daughter had discussed a different sign, a dragonfly, which, of course, was much easier to pull off, as my mom would say. Within an hour of her passing, my daughter came running up to me very excited and exclaimed about a dragonfly landing on her foot while she was sitting alone by the pool. And no matter what she did, it stayed there. I loved that I loved that for her, but was jealous that she got a sign and I didn't. Well, about a month later, I was rushing out the door to head back to work. I'm a night shift ER nurse when a dragonfly zoomed towards me and smacked me right in the forehead between my eyes. I just laughed and said, Okay, Mama, I see you. Also, I had a very vivid dream a few months back. I don't usually remember my dreams, but this one was so real feeling, I couldn't help but remember it. I was up for promotion at work. It was a leadership position I didn't really want and had only applied for and after a lot of peer pressure. Well, in the dream, I was sitting down with my boss and she was explaining to me why they didn't give me the job and whatnot. My reply was relief. And I said, Oh, no, that's perfectly fine. I was going to come talk to you and tell you I had reconsidered and no longer wanted the position anyhow. When I woke up, I was so relieved to know that my spirit guides and I were on the same page. I didn't get the job, nor did I want it, obviously, and now I've recently applied and got the position I really wanted and can't wait to start in June. That's a very upbeat email.
I love
What?
the sign she gets from her mom of the dragonfly smacking her in the face.
Yes. Yes, and that the mom was saying, "Oh, that one might be a little tough to pull off. Let's find something a little easier." And then boom, there's the dragonfly.
That's
So cool.
beautiful. I know, it really is. And that is such a normal feeling when someone else in the family gets a sign first, and you're like, well, why them and not me?
And and I also love the generational that the mother, the grandmother, the granddaughter all had a discussion about this. That's
Yes,
very cool.
that is. And that shows a lot of love, closeness, and maturity and wisdom about the death and dying process.
Right. And the sense of relief, and I think that that's another thing a lot of people are talking about in readings or in conversations or with their own private thoughts of, is this what I really want to do in my life? Is this really the path I'm meant to be on? And the fact that her guides came through in that dream and there was a sense of relief. I don't have to do this. And then the position that she really wanted showed up and she's excited about it. So sometimes when we don't get what we want, it's exactly what we're supposed to experience.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds like she knew it the whole time.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's when our guides really do need to step in and say, hey, put to work what you've been learning. This isn't your path.
Well, when I do readings or work with very intuitive people, I always say, a lot of times you'll get a reading and you don't get the big wahoo. You get validation or you get clarity about what you've already known with your own intuition. And I think that that's exactly what this person is saying as well.
Yeah, I agree. We're so sorry to hear about your mom's passing, but so relieved that she was able to get through to both you and your daughter. And congratulations on your new job in June.
Yes, very exciting.
Okay, our next one says, I've been listening for years and I've never written in before, but today something happened and I figured you guys would get a kick out of it. I was outside doing chores and listening to your latest podcast about signs versus coincidence with my headphones in, and you guys were talking about when you want a message from your guides to ask for something specific and within a certain timeline. I was thinking about how every time I have ever asked for something specific like this, it has never worked. And then I think my guides communicate to me in other ways. I asked my guides if they could please just show me that they are with me. So I'm listening to the podcast and I go to my mailbox and open it up, and right on top is a postcard from a real estate company that says, "Waiting for a sign," in big letters at the top. I just laughed out loud. Perfect timing. Wow, that is beyond perfect timing. And it shows that your guides have a great sense of humor. And I like that you know how you and your guides work, because we always will sometimes suggest, state a sign, something from nature, something in music, and then tell them to show it to you within the next 3 to 5 days. And she's like, "Yeah, that's a nice idea, but that's not how my guides work." And boy, was she right, because she says, "Show me you're around me." And that sign was just in that mailbox.
I love that. And it's fun. It's very
Hmm.
fun. And you're right. Spirit has a good sense of humor. And I love when something comes that I haven't asked for. Those are my favorite
Those are the
signs.
best. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, our next one, I've listened to the April 6th podcast 3 times now. The second time of listening, Samantha had mentioned about asking to see a duck. No kidding, that afternoon, a duck flew over when I hadn't seen a duck previously flying over in a year. Then on the third time of listening, Denise had mentioned about seeing a hawk. No kidding, not even 2 minutes after mentioning a falcon flew over with a catch in its mouth. The podcast wasn't even over. I take these signs as authenticity of what you share for everyone in a very supportive way. Oh, that's nice.
That's lovely.
Yeah,
What are the odds?
true. Thank you for listening 3 times.
Yeah.
I do that though. I'll have to re-listen to things and be like, did I, what am I, it almost like it's a naggly feeling. Did I miss something? Is there something more there? So it's like rereading a book that you love another time and seeing a whole new meaning.
Well, especially if you're listening to the podcast and you're doing other things, sometimes you'll just zone out for whole minutes and not even be aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll be listening to one of my murdery podcasts, and then they'll say they caught the killer, and I'm like, "Wait, when did that happen?" And I realized I had gotten distracted while I was doing something and not really listening, so it could be that. But I love that she got the animal signs in her own life just as we were saying them. That's another sign that spirit is with us. They're watching and listening with us, and they have a sense of humor.
Yes. And validation.
Yeah. Okay. So this next one says, "This is my first time writing to the show." Wow, that's lovely. This is a lot of first time writing in. However, I felt moved to share this with you too because of your Science of Intuition episode. About 10 years ago, I worked as an administrative research assistant with a psychologist who utilizes EEG to study and manipulate brain states. If I remember correctly, most of his work was focused on anxiety, depression, and ADHD at the time. He was just getting started with exploring other states of consciousness, such as psychic phenomenon and altered states of consciousness experienced in shamanic practices. We discussed the default mode network a lot. He was exploring the use of biofeedback to elicit altered states of consciousness, which, if you knew me, is right up my alley. So naturally, I offered to be the guinea pig. Picture this: we're in his clinical office with his wife's practice right across the hall, so people are around. I think this is important because I had this experience in a setting I was comfortable in, but it was by no means a place I would choose to have an altered state experience, which to me gave the technique more validity. I have on an EEG cap sitting in a large comfy chair with a vibration pad against my back, headphones on, and glasses that project light onto closed eyes. The vibration pad, headphones, and glasses were all programmed to turn on or intensify as my brainwaves lined up with the preset protocol in the EEG software. This is the feedback. I believe I started to sync up fairly quickly. Mind you, I wasn't an avid meditator, and I had journeyed one time with a shaman at that point in my life. The only hallucinogenic I've ever taken was a psilocybin 10 years earlier as a teenager. I say this to illustrate that this kind of altered state was not something I sought out regularly, so I don't think my mind had a template to copy. My real as day experience, as my physical body sat still, my body began to wobble left and right. This weirds me out, and the feedback starts to dwindle. I relax myself and I begin to wobble again more intensely, and now back and forth as well. This is the first time in my life I became distinctly aware of the difference between my energetic body and my physical body. I'm freaked out. I lose all feedback signals. I have a chat with myself. If I had taken drugs, I wouldn't be as thrown off by this. I would expect it. This is no different. This is actually safer. No drugs are involved. This rationalizing helps, and we're off to the races. Once I sync up again, I have no trouble staying in that state. It begins with the wobbles, proceeds to a full on gyroscope of spinning for maybe a minute. Then I stop spiraling. Feeling queasy, I think of where to set myself. I think of a mountaintop and I'm there. It's too cold and I can't breathe well. So I try a lake with mountains. I'm there. But the moving water isn't helping my unsettled stomach. The forest, perfect. I sit with my back against a tree. And it occurs to me I can leave my meat suit that is still queasy there. So I get up and look at her resting peacefully against a tree and proceed to move around the forest. I came across this white, soft edged, light entity that is very familiar to me. It's the same entity I met on my first journey. I look to the right, and the forest has a white tunnel like a portal with ants marching into it, and I drop out of the experience. My bodies are aligned back into the office chair. I sit there for a few minutes, allowing myself to feel fully grounded. I felt very content and in awe of the experience. Nothing externally made me drop out of the experience. I think I got all that I could handle at that time. This is one of the coolest experiences of my life. Since you two have a love for science and the metaphysical, I thought you'd enjoy this story. You are right. Well, we certainly did. I mean, that's amazing. Now, how did her psychologist boss do this? The vibration pad, the headphones, and glasses that were shining light into her eyes. That sounds very different from a Faraday cage.
Yes, it does. It
That's
really
really cool.
does. And I think that it's an excellent, excellent point on that science is a lot of science, a lot of modalities, a lot of changes are happening with how expansive our consciousness really is and how much we have available to us. So this is incredible.
And how we really are in control of our thoughts and our energy, because she started to go out of body 2 or 3 times and got scared and went back. And then she finally left. And then she could find out she could go anywhere just with the power of her thought, a lake, a beach, a forest. And then she was able to discover that she could leave a bit of herself even further by popping out of her body.
Well, one line really stood out to me was when she said she didn't have a template to copy. So it wasn't the same as, oh, I meditate a certain way or I journey a certain way or I've done psychedelic therapies repeatedly to rebuild neural pathways or start new templates. That's a perfect word for it. So
Yeah.
that makes it even more interesting and very cool because now there is the muscle memory for it. So it'd be interesting to see if she pursues this, where it will lead next.
And it sounds like she saw her guide helping her.
Yeah.
The ants marching into the tunnel. I don't know about that one.
Well, see, if this was a an experience that I was having, I would look up ants. What's the spiritual meaning of ant? Is there anything about a tunnel? So if you get curious and you kind of look at it through the two-way mirror about the different things that you see in these experiences, often it will validate and correlate with the experience that you were having. It's pretty amazing.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
And tying it back to what we were saying about how our loved ones in spirit give us these signs, think about it. If in our physical body, in this heavy third dimension that we live in, if we can find a way to go anywhere with the intention of our thoughts, as this listener did through this experience, imagine what our guides and loved ones on the other side can do.
right. And I think this person had ended with, that this will help you get through some difficult things in your life. It will help you get clarity or understanding. What a beautiful, beautiful experience to have.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing.
Yes. The next one's pretty quick. It says, I have severe anxiety, including panic attacks. Oh, my heart goes out to you. That's a living hell. Sometimes it causes very vivid, frightening thoughts, like imagining my car breaking down or getting into an accident. I know these scenarios are irrational and never happen. They're anxiety driven. My question is, how can you tell the difference between anxiety and intuition or a premonition? Are there clear distinctions? That's a really good question because I I've thought about this. The description I can say is the energies of the world right now feel like the bass is too loud, and it's that constant thump, thump, thump that we're getting hit with of anxiety, overwhelm, fear. It's very intense. But that 0 to 60, is it old muscle patterns, old panic, old memories coming back? Or is there a basis? Is there a root cause that needs to be addressed? I guess is what I'm trying to say, that why the panic attacks are happening. Is there a trauma? Is there a root cause or initial traumatic experience? But then again, some people just come more anxious than others.
Very true. But I think when it's a premonition, it's usually not followed with anxiety feelings. It's usually emotionless. Intuition doesn't have a lot of emotion with it. Have you noticed that?
Well, sometimes, yeah, for sometimes my emotions, I feel like they match with the intuition. Like I'll get basically a heart punch, for lack of a better term. But with the premonitions, I think the anxiety can be overwhelming and it can be environmental. It can also be intrinsic to who we are as people. Intuition often for me is more spontaneous, and it I feel validated, I feel seen, I feel like, okay, I can trust this. There's a level of trust with intuition. And when it's a premonition, the only way I can describe that is it does mirror anxiety a lot at times, especially if it's don't get on the plane, take a different ride home. I don't know why I shouldn't go to that dinner, but I'm not going. And it becomes almost a line in the sand kind of a feeling.
I do think it's hard sometimes to tell the difference, but usually with premonition, it's not as heightened as anxiety. Anxiety is so anxious and so quick and so pushy. You got to do this. This is going to happen. Oh my gosh. And so I think learning to tell the difference between how your anxiety works and how your intuition works is going to be really helpful. And if you do have a history of panic attacks, a lot of research has shown that working with EMDR therapy can be really, really helpful with that, where a trained therapist can help you release a lot of those stored emotions. But if this listener could get into the habit of doing a sitting in the power meditation, which you can find everywhere on the internet, you can just put it into YouTube and learn how to do it. But that's where you learn how to feel your own energy so that you can discern between what's mine and what isn't mine. And when those anxious thoughts do intrude, I always just picture three X's, like from the Family Feud, and I just go clear, cancel, delete.
Now, I know I've shared this story before, but what my example for this would be, my ex-husband and I, we were in the Siskiyou Mountains in Southern Oregon, and we were at the top of this mountain road, very curvy mountain road, and we were pulling another vehicle behind us. We had gone to buy a vehicle, we were pulling it behind the vehicle that we were driving, and I got a panic attack of, we can't do this, the brakes aren't strong enough, please don't drive down this mountain, please, please, please. And I was almost hysterical about it. And my ex-husband, being true to his, you're worried, don't worry about it. Well, halfway down the mountain, we lost the brakes on the vehicle we were driving, spun around sideways, like spun on this narrow mountain road, and the vehicle that we were pulling almost dragged us over this cliff. And if you've ever driven in mountain roads in rural areas, oftentimes they don't have guardrails. But the premonition was something, please don't do this. And it mirrored with the anxiety of, it was such a panicked feeling. So I think sometimes they can go hand in hand. But lo and behold, no one was hurt. We made it off the mountain,
Oh, was
but
that an I told you so argument from hell?
no, he never owned that, but that's okay. But to
Worse.
me, the vehicle that we were towing flipped on its side and dragged, and the vehicle we were in Like I was in the passenger seat and the wheels on my side were hanging over. I haven't thought about this in years. We're like right on the edge of the cliff, like getting ready to tip over. Like if I had opened the door, I would have flown off the cliff. I would have just gone, oh, off into space. So it's fun. It's fun when you can laugh about it now because at the time it was one of those, oh shit, there, but for the grace of God go I. But I think that it
But
can
you
mirror.
had that premonition and it felt like anxiety.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
And
that's so hard then.
so
Yeah.
I think sometimes there isn't a clear distinction, I guess is the point of the silly story. Um,
Yeah, sometimes there isn't. But how often have you had a premonition like that with anxiety?
right. Or fear-based 0 to 60 stuff of worst case scenario. There's going to
Right.
be an accident, or my kids aren't going to make the train and they're going to be stuck and this is going to happen and what's going that 0 to 60 feeling is very, very different to me.
Yeah, it is. And it can become a habit. You ever notice
Yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah. And
Okay.
it's hard to walk away from.
Oh, it is. But that's when I think learning to sit in stillness and focusing on trusting yourself, trusting the decisions that you have made in the past, and knowing that you always land on your own 2 feet because you're strong tends to help alleviate a lot of that.
Yes.
Okay, our next one says, I recently have had 2 dreams. I think they were dreams, although I felt I was awake with both. The first was a man standing at the end of my bed, and someone just passed him. For some reason, I feel they were spirits. I felt they wanted to talk or tell me something. I felt as though there were many in the background. It scared me. I jumped up from bed and ran into the kitchen, grabbed a flashlight, headed back, and shined it all over my room. I even flashed it outside the windows. I know I was awake on my way to retrieve the flashlight. I really had it in my hand. I do not know why I did not simply turn the light on. 2 weeks later, I again had a similar dream. This time it was a man standing at the end of my bed in 1940s attire. He had on a suit with a long jacket and a 1940s fedora hat. I could also sense many more standing behind him. I screamed as loud as I could. It was hard. It was heard throughout the house. This was real. I was not dreaming when I screamed. This time, I turned the light on. Afterward, I sensed they were not here to scare me or hurt me. They just wanted to talk to me or ask me something. In the past, I have had many repetitive dreams, and now these. I've never had scary dreams in the past. These spirits don't seem to chase me or haunt me. It just scares me when you see someone standing there that should not be there. I remember Samantha saying when she was a child, a man with a red cap kept coming to see her. Is this same thing happening to me? Or is this a dream message? I have had dreams of people I know or acquaintances that have passed that want to give me messages to their family members, but I always recognize them in my dreams, these other people I don't know. So this is fairly common experience for mediums. The man with the red cap, he actually came to me when I was awakening to my intuition again in my late 20s and early 30s. So it wasn't as a child. And his main message, kind of like your dreams, he was always at the foot of my bed or the side of my bed, and there were always a lot of people with him. And they were spirits who had just died very suddenly, and they needed a medium, someone who was connected to the earth energy, to talk to them and help them realize that they had passed and needed to cross over and go through the light because they had died so suddenly, they weren't acclimated to the other side, and so they couldn't see or hear spirits or guides who had already gone through the light. That's why they needed a medium. And so I think that might be what's happening to you. And so I would just gently encourage you to consider taking an intuitive development class or starting to embrace this. But if you don't want to do this and you just want sleep to be sleep, that's okay too. You just need to state that. I would recommend that you tell your guides, and before you go to bed at night, just say, hello, everyone, higher self, guides, whoever it is you pray to. I am sleeping now and I do not want to be disturbed. And you won't be once you set those boundaries.
And the clarity that this person felt, the description of the man with the fedora, knew it was the 1940s clothing, then and said a couple of times, this was real. I wasn't dreaming. And knew that she had gone to get the flashlight, knew why didn't I turn the light on? So that does feel like there was something more there. And well, I get freaked out when somebody pops up like whack-a-mole in the middle of the night in the dark.
Yeah,
Like,
who
wow.
wouldn't? Yeah,
I,
it's
and, and we talk to dead people all the time.
right. But when you're sleeping, you feel safe and cozy, and then ta-da. So
Yeah.
it can be super jarring. I had a listener years ago, she sent me a bunch of dreams. She consistently has a dream where she's like in an old brownstone in New York City at the bottom of the stairs. And there's spirits who have recently passed, and she talks to them and tells them it's okay to go upstairs through the light. And I just
Wow.
thought that was interesting. And you know how mine are usually at that little oceanside cafe that I see in my dreams. So I just wonder if some of us at night go to these locations and have a little job to do.
I think there is. I think that the more I don't have the same foundational skills that you have with the dream world. We've talked about that many, many times. And I love, love, love your perspective on this because there is a difference between being able to share messages to family members because you recognize folks and having a complete stranger turn up that feels still like a visitation.
Yeah, it really is different. But she's doing some good work.
She is. And I love that you brought up being a natural medium and that can be part of it.
Yeah. But it doesn't
Um,
mean you have to
you
do
don't
anything
have
with
to.
it. I just want to make that
No,
clear. But if you
no.
want to, it's there and clearly waiting for you.
Yes. And I think we need more of that. It doesn't always have to be about hanging out a shingle. So
No.
it really doesn't. Okay. Our next one says, I debated whether or not to share this, but it stayed with me, and I'm curious to hear if anyone else has had a similar experience. I have pretty vivid dream visits and nighttime travels, and last night I visited a place where there had to have been over 100 TV sets. People were walking from one to the next, kind of like they would at a museum exhibition, and what was playing on each TV was extreme violence and chaos. It took me a minute, but I realized each TV was playing scenes from the current crisis. I know we're all deeply concerned and outraged, but to see the fear and terror and violence playing out in what appeared to be reels on these TVs was overwhelming. It left me with the impression that this crisis is just as scary, if not more so, than the fear and terror and violence of World War II. Anyway, I was struck with the layout of this place and also curious about the other souls who were there watching these TVs with me. It seemed like a place on the other side that we can visit to get a real sense of what's going on visibly, but also on a deeply disturbing emotional level. Before waking up, I got the strong sense that these current crises have left an indelible mark on Earth and its energy field and will continue to feel the effects long after it ends. My question is, this layout of the TVs, do you think this is common for souls to visit and watch events or historical events play out to get a better sense of them? I was wondering if anyone else has had this same experience. If there were other souls in the room watching with me, perhaps one of them is a listener. Thanks for sharing and praying, like all of us, for this crisis to end. Immediately, what comes to mind? Do I think this is common for souls to visit and watch events or historical events? 100%. I think that they want to help us, they want to support us. I think people are having recollections of other times, of other lives, of other experiences. And on top of that, the generational imprint that we hold from previous family members or lineage that may have experienced different traumatic events. So I think that this is a very succinct email, very important.
I agree. I haven't not dreamt about TVs, but I've had many dreams where I'm standing, usually in a meadow or a field with a bunch of people, and in the center, like, is like a floating globe with an image of something going on in the world. And our guides are behind us, teaching us and demonstrating how, with focused group thought, we can project healing energy into that image and what's happening on Earth. And so maybe that's a part of it, that this listener is doing that work on the other side as well. But to add some brevity to this heaviness, Denise, I would like to be able to go to a place on the other side with TVs showing what's actually going on in the world because sometimes I look at the news and I think, what's true anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's so skewed this side or that side. It'd be nice to have an objective place you can go to get actual facts.
Right. Yeah. Th- It's a very good point. It's an incredibly good point.
But I don't think we have to go to sleep and look at TVs or sit in a field with our guides sending prayers and healing. I think we can do this in our waking time too. And I think this beautiful email reminds us of that.
And not to be trite in any way, shape, or form, but it would be really cool to revisit that and change the channel
I
and
know, right?
and look for the beauty, look for, new life, look for uh, all the positive, wonderful, and I'm not being Pollyanna or altruistic, but there are some really incredible, beautiful things happening on the planet right now, too.
Well, what did Mr. Rogers tell us? Look for the
Love Mr.
helpers.
Rogers.
Me
Love that
too.
man.
And he always said, look for the helpers.
Yeah. But I think that this is must have been very brutal for the person who experienced it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very heavy.
Yeah.
But a sign that he's a or she is a true light worker.
Yes.
Okay, our next one said something popped into my mind recently and thought I'd mention it here to you guys since it's somewhat unorthodox. Some folks are master manifestors. Samantha, I believe you fall into this category. Borrowing a sports analogy, you seem like a Division One all-star when it comes to manifesting. Don't be shy, we see you. Wow, that's quite the compliment. Thank you. Well, what if published materials that were written by a master manifestor are shaping parts of our current reality? Like, for instance, Sophia Stewart, the creator of The Terminator and The Matrix. I tried to look up her astrology and human design info, but couldn't find anything reliable. The internet just says she's born between 1967 and 1969. Her popular books were turned into movies. I think you almost have to be living a life completely isolated from modern society to not hear a Matrix or Skynet reference from time to time. Both were set in a dystopian future where technology is the ruin of humanity. I wonder, do you think if a master manifestor wrote his hit series of books set in a more peaceful utopian future, that future would flesh out? I'm so curious to what you both think. Wow, I love this question. I do believe that some people are master manifestors, and I do believe the power of our words. I just started reading a book, Denise. It's called The Grammar of Angels. And
Oh,
it's about this genius who lived in Italy in the 1400s and how he looked at all the ancient books. He taught himself like 12 languages and spent his life studying the magic of words and how they really do have power. So I just started reading it. I feel like I joined a PhD class. It's very intelligently written, if you get my drift, but it's good. So, yes, I do think that when we write things down, they can actually manifest, especially when you write something that takes off that way. She didn't mention the Hunger Games, but that's another one. There have been so many dystopian type books. Mel Brooks' son, he wrote that zombie book that's so popular, that whole series. They turned those into movies. So I agree with her that it could be sending out this energy of, ooh, something wicked this way comes. But then I think about is it Philip C. Dick, Philip K. Dick? Philip
yes.
K. Dick, who wrote all those dystopian books that were negative about the future, Blade Runner, for example, or The Man in the High Castle. He always said that those books came to him almost fully formed. It makes you wonder what came first, the chicken or the egg.
And is it giving us the option of multiple futures and realities? And that
Right.
was just one that presented.
True. And the heavier energy is easier for us to pick up on intuitively, right? So maybe that's why so many writers are picking up on that. I don't know. But I have wondered that. And I do think if we could write a super positive, happy, uplifting book, that it could have a positive, uplifting effect. I mean, look at some of the wonderful best-selling books that Og Mandino's work, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. There have been so many that have just The Secret, the way of the what's the Peaceful Warrior, Buddha at the Gas Pump. I mean, we've had a lot of books that have done that, but I understand what she's saying. Very few fiction books.
True. It's something to think about.
Yeah,
If
it
we,
really is because what we feed our mind with is ultimately what we manifest.
yes.
And so if we're feeding our mind with these negative, awful images of the future, and collectively we are doing that, then maybe that is contributing to a negative future.
And I have to agree, you do fall into that category of Division One All-Star
I
when it
don't know.
comes to manifest.
I don't know about that. I know that I've studied it and I try really hard, and I appreciate the
Yeah.
compliment.
Our last one is very, very quick, and this is from an avid listener and someone that Samantha and I both know and respect and love dearly. And she's very, very brilliant and analytical and highly, highly intuitive and empathic. So, those of you who are listening that have that same brain chemistry combination, you understand. Her father passed, and she'd been asking for a sign, and every day she goes out to sit on her little patio and have her tea in the morning. And she feels her dad sitting with her some mornings. And then this one morning, she said, "Oh, I'm not going to have my tea. I'm just going to go out with a book." And she said, "You know what, Dad? If you're really here with me, then please bring me a sign. Let me know that you're really here." And as she said that, a hummingbird came out of nowhere. There shouldn't have been a hummingbird there, and came right up to an inch of her face. But the fun part of the story is she had recently decided to get a tribute tattoo for her dad with the outline of a hummingbird.
Whoa.
I love it. So that goes back to what we said about signs and I've connected with her dad in spirit, and he has a great sense of humor. And I almost could hear him saying, "Well, that's a good one, isn't it?" And it was just so perfect, because we do doubt, we do wonder, is that really you? Is this really a sign? So I think that that's a very positive, optimistic note to end on, is that they are there, they do hear us, and um, keep your eye open for the signs, because they are going to show them to us.
Well, and don't you find when you are connecting with them in readings that they covet those moments we have to ourselves, whether it's a cup of tea in the morning or a walk around the neighborhood or a quiet drive in the car to work? They love those moments because that's when they can link in with us and send us their love and thoughts. You've noticed that happen a lot?
Yes, yes. And the fact that this person asked, if it's really you, please, I need to know. You hit those down times, and you
Oh
you wonder,
yeah.
oh, is that really you, or am I just wanting it to be you? And uh, so I love when they make it so clear.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Wow. What a cool smorgasbord of questions and stories we had this month.
very much so.
Everything
Yes,
from all sorts of astral journeys and dream experiences to signs from loved ones and our beloved pets. I love it. Thank you guys so much for taking time to send all of these in. I'll tell you one thing I've learned is how powerful our thoughts are. I think this episode really does demonstrate that in more ways than one through these stories. So let's all just take a moment as we wrap up to just really visualize the entire planet and everyone listening surrounded in just a comforting, brilliant, golden energy of light, peace, happiness, and protection. And when you can feel that beautiful, beautiful, protective golden light energy swirling within you and all through your body and your energetic system, project it out until you can see it wrapping itself around and around and around, all of us listening together. And then let's push that out till it wraps around and around the whole world, keeping us in a beautiful embrace of love and protection. I think the more that we can do that, the more we can help be the light for ourselves and everyone. So, everyone, remember, as always, to show up, do great work, and shine your light.